I'm Felina.
And I'm Summer.
And you are listening to Broken Broken.
Because we're both.
The podcast about living your best life by getting real.
I'll give you some background on Corri.
Okay, yeah.
We have Corri.
Oh dear.
We have Corri Johnson today. Corri and I met freshman year of college.
Where was this?
At OU.
Okay.
We had, what was it? English comp, I think, together, right? And
we actually had the first class that I remember doing, like really talking to, was actually the math class, because we both had to go to the teacher's office after hours for help.
Was that the one with the horrible teacher, that woman who was a horrible teacher? Or was that a different math class? I don't remember. It's been a minute.
It was freshman or undergrad.
It was a math class. We did have an undergrad English class, and we were in the anthropology class together, but I dropped it because I couldn't stand it.
What year were you at OU?
This would have been 98.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was there like 2001.
Yeah.
I was like a junior by then, but
okay.
Didn't go my first 2 years.
I had already gotten pregnant and dropped out by then.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
As it goes, you know.
So I was 17, and I moved out of my parents' house and went to college, and I lived in an apartment right there off of campus that no longer exists, right across from the duck pond.
Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about, because they were the cheapest ones, and I almost
because they should have been condemned.
Yeah.
They were terrible.
Yeah. Oh, I remember. Yeah.
But she lived in Moore.
Okay.
So when she had long breaks between classes, we would walk over to my apartment, so she didn't have to,
yeah.
write something. So I have no idea how, at some point, not far into this, she's like, I'm thinking about moving out of my mom's house. And I'm like, hey, move in with me. Because I'm impulsive, as we learned in the birth chart episode.
Oh, I am too. Yeah.
And so her family has taken me ever since, and I've been part of her family.
Aww. That's awesome.
So all those broken animals she collects, I'm one of them.
No.
Yes. And that reference the listeners didn't get to hear. Earlier, we got to hear Corri giving medication to her special needs dogs. So that's
because she collects broken animals.
She does, and she cares for them.
I think it's amazing. You must be a good person. I don't even know you, but it speaks volumes to your character.
Well, she's tolerated me all these years, so there's that.
Hey, I think the toleration was mutual. Don't act like it's just me here.
No, I love you. You're great. And your whole family's been great.
So tell us about yourself, Corri. I don't know anything about you. Are you I know Summer said you're in Germany right now?
Yes, I live in Germany, just south of Frankfurt. And we have been here for, this is now 8.5 years, the second time I've lived here.
Do you want to tell us how you ended up in Europe in the first place?
Well, I was in the Army, and I was stationed in upstate New York, Fort Drum. Yay, frozen, chosen. And then I re-enlisted. The opportunity came up for me to come to Germany. Of all the choices that they gave me, it was actually the best one. So I came over here in the Army in late 2007, and I met this guy, and against my better judgment, I ended up married. It was
Nobody ever takes my advice.
It was not in my plan, but that's just what was meant to be, I guess. So.
Well, in the military, you can't move with them if you're not married either.
Well, yeah, and it is complicated over here in Germany because you have, I forget what it's called just now, it was a long time ago, but the rules are basically you have to, you can only be in Europe as an American if you have a work visa or you're here as a tourist, which is only 90 days. 90 days in every 6 months. So when John was getting out of the Army, once he signed his papers, he signed out, suddenly he was on a tourist visa.
Oh, okay.
So he was go back to the States.
Or get married.
Okay. And it was like, well, hey, you know what? We're doing pretty good here. Let's give it a chance. Why not? Why the heck not? And then you apply, then you're allowed to have your family members with you. They very rarely deny. In places like Germany, there's no reason not to allow family members. So you apply, and then they give you permission to have your family over, and then they also then get this sort of coverage that isn't a visa. I don't know if that makes any sense. You're allowed to be here without a proper visa. Okay. Because you're with the forces.
Huh. What a functional, immigration policy. I have to be a smartass for a moment.
Lord, our
well, that's just the agreement that the Americans have with the Germans. There's a whole different system for other people, which is actually also functional. But we could talk about that if you want. And then, fast forward, we were in Germany for 2 years. I got out of the army. Fast forward, we lived in England for a year, and then we ended up coming back here in summer of 2010, and we've been here since.
And any plans to come back to the United States?
Can I plead the fifth?
Yes, you can.
We've settled in pretty good here, and there's a lot of things about life over here that suit us really well, and we're gonna stay here as long as we possibly can. And I won't lie, I am trying to find a way to stay here beyond that. So.
So that overstaying your visa.
Are you still in the military?
No, okay. I got out in June of 2009.
Okay.
I actually am the one who dropped her off at the recruiting station for basic. I still remember that.
So what do you do now in Germany?
At this point, I am a student. I'm doing an online course with the University of South Dakota for a master's in addiction counseling and prevention.
That's amazing.
Well, awesome. I hope so. I feel quite overwhelmed sometimes because most of the students in my classes are already working as counselors. They already have some qualification or degree or something, and I'm over here, 38 years old, and I've got zero experience. I mean, we just did introductions for the first week of this semester, and it's like, what have you done? What can you bring to the class? And I'm like, a willingness to learn and a desire to help.
That's important, though.
And all these people are over here saying what they've done and the qualifications they have and all these things, and I'm just like, oh, okay, well, that's I'm gonna hide over here now.
Oh, but you undervalue your skills. You have a lot of experience dealing with addicts in your life, so it's not like this stuff's new to you.
It's not. It's just a matter of being able to do it properly and with some measure of confidence that I'm not going to get it really, really wrong, which is very important. I'm not really. I'm trying to. I'm silly, but it's very serious. It's a very serious thing. It's critical that you get it exactly right for each individual person, because that may be their last chance. You never know.
We've had somebody on before who's been through, rehab 6-7 different times.
I think it was 8. I think we got to a count of 8 during the episode.
And so what you're saying is very true. I mean,
yes. I
don't know if anybody, but he probably didn't have therapists who cared like you seem to actually want to get it right the first time, and
To be honest, from again, everything I say is purely from a student's perspective, because I don't have any experience working in the field yet. From what I gather from all the experiences of my classmates and my professors, sometimes it's not exactly about the counselors or even the clients. It's quite often about the system.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, because you have counselors who desperately care and are doing their very best, and you have clients who are trying, and relapse is definitely a part of recovery, and it takes time to figure it out. It's just in the middle of it all, the system is twisted up, it's complicated, it fails, people get left behind, and people may not even get the right chance. I mean, if your insurance pays for it, and then you get your 28 days. 28 days is not enough. It's not enough for anyone.
No. And access
and that's
is
pretty obvious to me, and I'm just a student.
Right. Access is such a problem over here.
Right.
What does it look like over there? Because you've lived in several places in Europe now.
It's different. I'm not terribly experienced with it. I am, at this point, working to get into the system.
Mm-hmm.
But I know that, England, there's, because of the NHS, you get one, as far as I understand. I could be wrong,
What do
but
you
this
mean?
is how I understand it so far. You get one chance. Like, if you
So
are
they'll pay for
struggling,
it through the one time.
right? Because it's on the national health system. You get one. I think it's 28 days or something like that, or there may be various programs and things, but that's the one you get.
So what happens
Which
after
is why,
that? Can you private pay if you can afford it? Do you know?
I think so because last spring I did a class, and one of the assignments was you had to go to a clinic and interview the manager or someone who worked in the clinic. One of the clinics I was in contact with was a clinic in England, and it was a private clinic, and you could go on your own without the NHS paying for it. So, I mean, unfortunately, as I said, I don't have a whole lot of experience with that, so I can't really speak accurately on this, but I do know that there is an NHS provision for it, and you can go to a clinic, should you have the money. There's also clinics like that in, the one I actually interviewed for was in the Netherlands. And it was basically...
Yeah, me too.
I want to go there.
We want to
the
go there.
Netherlands. Or anywhere but here.
Okay.
Yeah, that's really what it's just. We just want to leave America.
Oh my God, it's terrible. So, can you tell us what people over there think of the state of our nation right now?
Yeah, what is the consensus among your peers?
I am really in love with pleading the fifth right now.
Oh please, we need to know.
We need
this one.
to know. We wanted to feel validated.
By and large, when they hear something in the news or I tell them about something, they look at me with this really dumbfounded look, like, oh, that doesn't make any sense.
Yes, exactly. It doesn't.
That's how we feel every day.
You don't even get laughter. You don't even get mockery. You just get this, the blink stare.
What the hell is wrong with you? Like, surely this isn't real.
I do come across occasionally, very rarely, some people who will, how do I put this? They don't really like the government of America, specifically one person in particular.
Ditto.
We can say
you really hate him.
We hate Trump. Like, I'm gonna say that. I don't care. Yeah, like, fuck him.
Okay.
I see no redeeming qualities.
Yeah, we don't worry about being too politically correct. No. We're fine with saying fuck Trump. I mean,
Okay. Well, he's definitely not my choice personally. Right. But what they will say is, I've had some people say, he's a mess. They will try to be diplomatic about it. They'll say he's messing things up, but it's going to lead to something else. And it's like that.
Yeah, but
that's
that could be
wrong.
something horrible.
It could.
Have you seen the awful things humans can do? Like.
I just, by and large, people just have no idea, like, what did you do? Why did people vote for him? And it's like, well, it's hard to explain.
He ran on He ran on a platform of racism.
Yeah.
And that's what got him elected.
He plays to people's fears, and he allows them to be victims. It plays to their fears and it's like, well, I'm struggling, but it's somebody else's fault. It allows them to be the victim when, they know they really shouldn't. They really shouldn't be.
Or they're blaming the wrong people. I mean,
Yeah.
I mean,
they're not blaming themselves, which maybe they should
the
be.
system. Sometimes it's a problem with the system, not with those scary other people that aren't like us.
It's a lot of misdirection too. Right. It's like, look at this shiny object.
Well, he's a sociopath, and he's great at gaslighting.
Yeah. Yeah, he just tells people that things don't exist, and half America is being a victim of his sociopathic tendencies and just believing him.
Right.
So, it's insane.
Well, if you watch Fox News, you think that's true.
I don't know.
It's curiously, it's also a product of our system. I'm not discounting anything you've said. I just it's curiously also because from over here, there's perspectives. People want to know how the system actually works, because they're like, how would this happen? Because there's nobody that I have encountered over here. And again, everything I say comes from just my personal experience. I'm not an expert on any given thing. I'll just put that out there. So I don't know how everyone's government works completely and thoroughly, but I've seen a lot of elections, and I have never seen a European election that had just two possibilities.
Are people more engaged there? Like, I mean, what percentage of people vote?
I don't know I don't know of any percentages. From what I can see, is it's people are quite involved. I mean, especially Scottish people. You know, they've had a lot of with their referendums and the whole Brexit thing and all of that. People get out. As far as I can see, they get out. But the problem is very similar to us, is that a lot of people, they don't really know what they're voting for. Mm-hmm. They're just, I need to go vote, and they'll turn out and they'll cast a vote for whoever they heard last on the radio. I mean, there's not always an intelligent process, but it's mitigated a little bit, I think, because you have such a broad system. You have at least three parties, you know, competing for the votes, and whereas you get a system like ours where it's very binary, you have the GOP and you have the Democrats, and if you want to vote for anybody else, you're splitting the Democrat vote.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So even if people didn't want to vote for Trump, they didn't want to vote for Hillary, so they had to choose, you know, and it sort of skews things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, absolutely.
So
we've got so many people straight party voting, it drives me insane. They don't know anything about the candidate, they don't know anything at all.
Well, and I mean, the Republicans think that the Republican Party is still the Republican Party that existed 20, 30 years ago.
I feel like not only would I like to get rid of straight party voting, I don't want your party affiliation on that ballot.
Yeah.
I want name only, and if you don't know who the fuck that is, don't vote in that race.
Yeah.
That's one of the main differences I've seen between Americans and various Europeans, really, is that we tend to identify with. Whenever I hear people over here talking about issues, they talk about the issues. They talk about where they stand on the issues. And now I won't say that there are people who don't vote just based on party, or they don't vote, or they, you know, not everybody thinks everything through. But by and large, when I hear people talking about issues, they talk about issues, and they don't talk about, well, I'm associated with this ideology, so I believe this.
Right.
It isn't like somebody else has. It's just, it seems like people don't know what to do, and so they just choose something, and it validates them. And it's like, well, I believe this one thing, so I must believe what everyone else believes on these other things too, and then I belong to something. And it's like, that's really kind of sad.
It is, and it's costing us dearly. It
Yeah.
really is. I said with this last election cycle here, with the governor race here, I made the comment. I said literally the only thing, the way to guarantee that you win an election in Oklahoma is to be a white man and run on a platform of God and guns. Yeah. I mean, he literally had a fundraiser that was a machine gun shoot. Did you know that?
No, he's such garbage.
Wow.
Yeah, and his entire campaign was run on family values, you know, the whole Bible thumper thing, and that's it.
It's so old. Oh, I hate it.
So we've had 8 years of people complaining about Governor Fallon, and Fallon is leaving office as the least popular governor, but they elected the same damn thing.
Yep.
I mean,
yeah.
Well, this guy's going to get right, you know. He's going to get it right.
Oh, Lord. I don't know what is wrong with people.
Yeah, living in the bubble of the Bible Belt is difficult, politically speaking.
Oh, yeah, you just agree to end abortions and be against LGBT, and people will throw their votes at you, and I'm just standing here like,
I'm just waiting for somebody to recognize that and run on that, and then just do the total opposite. Like, we need
that
somebody,
would be good.
Like, I'll go run, and I'll just be like, yeah, guns, yeah, and then see what happens. Like, just get me in, and then I'm just gonna do the opposite of everything I said.
That would work, because half your voters wouldn't even be paying attention to know what you actually did.
Yeah.
So they would just vote for you again.
I just have to fool the Republican Party into, pushing me up into their...
Well, if they figure out how to Google the podcast, it'll never happen.
I'm screwed if they listen to anything I've ever said publicly, which is a lot.
I'm unelectable in Oklahoma.
Yeah, I'm probably unelectable, period. It's fine, I don't care.
But wouldn't it be fun? I'm serious. The headlines.
Oh, they would be amazing.
I might even move back just to read them on a daily basis.
You can come back and be our campaign manager. We can run on a ticket together or something.
As conservative women.
Yes.
We're both
I'm a
lawyers.
preacher's daughter.
Yeah. And I can be the hardworking immigrant's daughter who's actually a citizen.
Who's assimilated.
Who I've assimilated into the culture and, am a supporter of the Republican Party.
Oh, Lord.
They would love us.
America.
Yeah, they could utilize our minority status.
Oh, you know they love to do that.
They'd love to do that. And then we would just pull the wool over their eyes. It would be amazing. I'm liking this plan more and more as we talk about it.
I'd have to be medicated.
Or it could be the mimosas talking. I don't know.
We've had several mimosas prior to calling you, so.
Our last guest brought us some champagne and orange juice. So
Oh.
that's continued
Nice.
to happen. Well, what else? What other interesting things are going on in your life?
Oh, I'm really not that interesting.
Everybody says that, but they are.
But I'm not.
So-
I'm a student.
Okay, so
I'm a student. I do that. I'm working on, when I'm not doing schoolwork, which I'm only a part-time student at this point because I'm also looking for work. I recently found out, we've been told all this time, we've asked my husband's boss numerous times, and they said, no, you're not allowed to work, and no, because of the way the system works in Germany, you're not allowed to do volunteer work either.
Mm-hmm.
And this was very disappointing, so I just found other things to do with my time. And just recently, and I'm talking just within the last 6 months, the second boss he had, because his bosses actually rotate every few years, it's quite common, it's very normal. The second boss said the same thing. Well, this third boss, he's like, oh no, you're fine, you can get a job. Because the governments have an agreement for this particular set of workers. The governments have an agreement, and based under the NATO statute, I'm allowed to have a job.
So all this time,
And-
I know you've been operating under the understanding you couldn't, so you could have been working?
Right. It was.
Wow.
I really struggled with that. It took me a long time to process that and work through that without being angry, because there's no point in being angry over the
Things
you
you
can't
can't
get the
control.
time back.
Right.
But at the same time, it was just like, you've got to be kidding me.
Yeah.
And so we went to the lawyer. We went to there's a German lawyer that works with this sort of thing with the Americans. And so we went to see her, and she printed out the statutes out of the German legal books. Like, if you think American legalese is difficult, I don't even think I could. My head would explode trying to work my head around the German legalese. But she printed this off. She explained it. She said, when you can go to any job you want, doesn't matter, and you can just show them this, and then you have the right to work. You have the right to work. And I'm just like, you've got to be kidding me. I could have been doing so much.
Right, because it was so hard for you to learn how to stay home.
Yeah.
Right? I was not made for this. I was not made to be a housewife. You should see my house. I don't have any kids. It should not look like this.
But you have special needs dogs, so it's okay.
I did. To be fair, I'm being dramatic. I'm just terrible at
funny.
windows and dusting, really. It's my weak points. But
I don't dust. It's fine.
I can't remember the last time I did.
How would you know where anything goes when you move it if there's no dust?
That's a good point. I like that.
Yeah.
So,
No,
can I... Oh, go ahead.
So now essentially it's just because I'm not European. In order to have a job, in order to get a job in a European country, you have to be from that country. You have to be European or from a European Union country.
Mm-hmm.
And then beyond that, you have to have a skill. You have to be a nurse or a doctor or a teacher or an engineer, something they need. And that spot cannot be filled by European workers, which makes sense. I'm not complaining about that. It's just those were the conditions I had been working on, and I have nothing to offer. So then they told me I had actually had the right to work the whole time, and it shook me, because I was just like, wow, I could have at least been doing volunteer work.
Right.
I could have been, but coulda, woulda. So now what I do basically is I'm looking for work. I work on my German language skills, because I am currently sort of waiting for a second interview on an internship position in a psychiatric hospital that also has a substance abuse treatment department.
Okay.
So I really need my German skills to be up for that.
Mm-hmm. Well, you're good with languages, you'll be fine. Corri has she has an older sister, which is quite a bit older than you, right? Like 12 years or something?
She's about 12 years older than me, yeah.
And then as adults, they found out their mother had placed a baby who's younger than Corri for adoption.
Okay.
So, which I lived with her for, I don't know, well, 1L year of law school. I lived with their mother. Because I was homeless. She was very nice and let me stay there.
You are not homeless.
I didn't have... Right, exactly. I didn't have anywhere to live, and I don't think I had talked to her at that point. It'd probably been a couple years since I talked to her. And I called her, and I'm like, I have nowhere to go. Can I come stay there? So I lived in Corri's childhood bedroom for 1L year.
She did.
And
it's actually one of my, my family is interesting and can be special, just as any family can be. It's one of our better legacies, I think, is that there's always, my mom told me of stories of her grandmother. They had a 2-bedroom house and 7 kids, and the 5 boys lived out in a boxcar because they didn't have space in the house, and there were always extra kids. So it was just always extra kids, no questions asked.
Taken.
And my mother grew up that way as well. My granddad always had 2 jobs, sometimes had 3. There were 5 of those kids in the house, and there was always a kid living in their house. They could barely feed all the ones they had, and they're just like, oh well, there's enough beans for another one. Mm-hmm. It's how I grew up, it's how my mom grew up, it's how my grandmother grew up, and so to have someone call you up and be like, hey, have you got, a little place to stay, or can you help my kid, or something like that, it's just, it's one of the, I'm really trying to more brag about my mom right now, because I like to do that.
She was really incredible, she really was.
She passed away about 4 years ago, and I don't have any children, and I'm not going to have children, so the legacy won't really travel past me in my line. My sister has had people living with her, and the rest of my family, my aunts and cousins and stuff, it happens there too, but I just, wanted to take a minute, interrupt, and brag at my mom.
No, you're fine.
That's amazing.
She was really amazing, and I miss her every day.
In my defense, I do have a stray living in my house at this point.
You do. She has a friend living with her right now.
Yeah, yeah, I do. It's not the first one. I remember the first one I had. Now this is just funny. I would come home and there would be extra shoes in my entryway, and I'm like, okay, somebody in my house.
Like, who's staying here now?
Like, look at my husband's like, do you know what that is?
I've been known to take in stray friends. I've done it multiple times. Yeah.
And I remember that's one thing Cam used to tell me is there was a lot of friends that her daughter had that they would find out, they would be teenagers, and when they came out to their parents, they would get kicked out. And so there were several who
knew
ended up coming and staying with her for different periods of time.
Yeah, that's amazing. Wow.
And so while I stayed... go ahead.
I was just going to say, I was always coming home. I remember in high school when my sister, when we call her our sister, actually, did I ever tell you how she came to be in our family?
How's that?
I'll just try and keep this quick.
Good.
My sister's ex-husband's little sister's junior high best friend.
That's very confusing.
She came into our house in high school, when I was in high school. Her friends were always scattered around on the couches. And my friends would come over and where are we going to sleep? And I'm like, it's fine. There's a couch here. And
there's some floor.
I got a double bed, and there's some floor over. It's fine. Don't worry about it. We've got 2 bathrooms. It's fine. It's a really great memory. It was a really great way to be.
So
But when
anyway,
when I was living with her, there were a few things. Like, she had said things like, I had of course adopted my older daughter, and so she kept asking me questions about adoption, and also like adoption searching, right? And I would just answer her questions, and I didn't pry about why she was trying to
ask.
get all this information. And then at one point, she would say things sometimes, like I said something about, I don't know if I was pregnant with my youngest or maybe, I don't know.
That wasn't you. I don't think that you were pregnant yet.
I don't think I was pregnant yet. I think I was saying something about I didn't want to get pregnant at that age because I was almost 30, and I was like, it was really hard on me the last pregnancy, and I was only like 20. And she's like, tell me about it. I was 35. And I stopped and looked at her. I know, and she didn't say anything. And I'm like, and I said, how old were you when you had Corri? And she said 32. Okay. And I didn't say anything. I'm like, I guess if she wanted me to know more, she would tell me more. So I just let it go. And
none of us were very good at math anyway.
Well, no, I caught it, and she could tell I caught it. But I just sat there for a minute to give her a chance to say something if she wanted to, and she didn't. So I didn't ask any questions. And but yeah, later it turned out she had placed a child for adoption. So how did you find out about that?
How old was I? I think I was 29. It was about 29. And I had come home from Germany for Christmas with my new-ish husband, and my sister was there. And I came in, and see, now my sister and I have different dads. And I didn't grow up with my dad, my father. He and my mother went their separate ways completely when I was about 3 years old, so I didn't meet him again until I was 17, and even then I didn't have much contact with him. So I go, they're like, oh, I got to tell you something. I'm saying, we got to tell you, we got to go back here in the bedroom. And I'm like, oh my gosh, somebody's sick, somebody's dying.
Right.
This is bad, this is really bad. And I get in there, and they shut the door, and my sister, backs up to the door like she's blocking it or something. I'm just like starting to, my knees are starting to shake here.
This terrifying buildup.
And my mom says, I have to tell you something. You have a brother. And I look at her and I said, how do you know? And my sister, you know that laugh that people do where they kind of snort a bit and in what's the word I'm looking for? I lose words sometimes now.
Okay.
Not disbelief. That snort that people do in disbelief. Like, what are you joking?
Snort of disbelief.
And my mom's like, what do you think? How do you think I know? And, because in my mind,
you were thinking from
how
your
does
father.
How does she know that my father had another child?
Right.
They didn't talk to each other. And it really broke that ice that they had built up. And she's like, when you were 3 years old, I had another child. And I'm sitting there like, and I could see she's really kind of stressed about it. She's really upset. Like, she's got this look. And my mom didn't show distress very often. She didn't show that she was afraid. She was very good at putting on a brave face. And so she's starting to look a little bit upset, and she's just, and I'm like, what? And she's like, well, I thought you would be mad. And it's like, well, you didn't even tell me anything about him. Like, where does he live? This. And I start asking all these questions, and she's just like, hold on. Because she's still processing the fact that I wasn't mad at her.
Huh.
And so we had to take some time to process this. Why would I be mad at my mother for making a choice like that? I mean, I know my mother. I'm sitting here thinking, I know you. And I told her this. I said, I know you. If you did that, it wasn't a whim. It wasn't lightly. It wasn't, nobody does that lightly. And I know her especially, and I'm just like, there's no doubt in my mind that if she did that, it was for a good reason. And my mind had completely glossed over this point, and I'm just trying to find out, like, about my little brother.
You're like
how
10
is he?
steps ahead of where they're at.
Right? And I felt a little bit bad that I had just completely disregarded this need that she had at this moment to really feel like I wasn't upset, and I was just like, zoom, where's my brother? Because I had always wanted a little brother. It's like, I have a little brother. When can I meet him? Can I talk to him? Can I do what? Just firing questions at her. And my sister's standing over here going, oh my god. So yeah, that was about how that went. And
So-
over time, sorry.
Oh no, go ahead.
It's just over time, I would just ask her questions and she would answer them. There was very little she would not answer. There were some very private things that she would not talk about, but it was just one or two, and it was like, all right, well, that's a no-go area, but there's so much here that I can learn. And I was just kind of like, I was just started telling people, I have a brother. Hey, I have a brother. So that's what it was like on my end. I mean, it was never easy for her, obviously, but
I think it was a relief for her to not have to hide it anymore and to be able to talk about it.
So did you?
And then the fact, sorry.
No, please.
I'm sorry. There's actually a little bit of a delay
there is.
sometimes.
Oh, sorry.
It's,
Please finish your thought.
I lost it.
I'm so sorry. Well, I was just gonna ask
do that. I
if
do
you've
it all
seen
the time.
him. Did you get to meet him?
Yes, that's one of my favorite stories, actually.
Please tell.
He was in the Navy, and you know what? I probably chatted with him. I don't know, Facebook, I guess. Chatted with him off and on over time, asking questions, talking, and it was really nice because the minute I started talking to him, he felt like somebody I had always known. Just the way he talked and the things we talked about. It was really nice. And so he wrote to me it was about 3 years later. He wrote to me and he's like, he was in the Navy and he was stationed somewhere, I don't know, and they were moving him around because of his job, just not permanently, but okay, go here, do your job, go here, do your job. And he writes to me and he says, I'm going to be in Sicily. Do you think you can meet me there? And I was like, heck yeah, I can meet you there. My husband, bless him, I was like, I need this flight. I need this plane ticket. And we're looking at this plane ticket and it's like, you've got to be kidding me. That's like a last minute flight. And it's not cheap to fly last minute on a main airline. And there were no budget airlines going there. He's like, but it doesn't matter. This is so important. You've got to do this. And so he made it happen. We made it happen. And I had this window and I just picked a few days and I went and I hung out by myself in Sicily for 2 days waiting for my chance. I went up and danced on the volcano on December, 21st, 2012, when the world was supposed to end.
Nice.
I literally took a bus up Mount Etna and I literally danced on the volcano. Nothing happened.
I love traveling by myself and doing stuff like that.
Fun.
So yeah.
That was a really fun trip by myself. It was very chaotic. I don't speak Italian. I speak Spanish. So I was over here speaking Spanish to these Italians, and they're speaking Italian back at me, and nobody cares. Nobody cares. It's fine. She's foreign, but she's trying, so it's fine. Anyway, so off track. And finally he messages me. The only contact we have is email, but it was before I had a smartphone, so I'm over here sending text messages to my husband. And he's getting into my email and writing to Luke for me, and we're doing this like crazy complicated thing. But finally, I get my chance. So my choice is to take a taxi half an hour out in the middle of nowhere to this military base on Sicily. And he shows up. He comes walking out to the gate, and it's December, and we're walking around on the military base. And we went to the food court. We got a burger, and we just BS'd for like 2 hours. I mean, that's the time he had, and so we talked about stories, misadventures, military, just how we grew up. You know, he had a lot of questions for me, and we just hung out in the food court of this Navy base in Sicily. And when he was out of time, I got myself a taxi and went back to my hotel.
Do you still
I
talk
took
to
a
him
little
very
tour
often?
bus. He's not a chatty person. He's doesn't have a Facebook anymore. If I contact him, it's usually through his wife, who's quite happy to talk to me. It's not that he doesn't talk to me or that I don't talk to him. It's just that it doesn't happen.
Yeah.
If that makes any sense. He's just one of those people who lives life right in front of him.
Right.
But if I were to write to him, I know he would write back to me. We went to his wedding I may or may not have started a bar fight at his bachelor party.
Oh, please
But
tell
as
us
far
that
as I know,
story.
as far as I know, he's we're on fine terms. Yeah.
So how did you start a bar fight at this party?
Yeah, I want to hear this story too.
Okay.
You're so funny.
It's not. It's it's not in my character to do things like that.
This is why it's gonna be funny.
Oh well, it's. I hope you're not disappointed here. So I was flying in from Germany specifically for the wedding, and I land in where were we? Alabama. Oh my gosh, it's my first time going to Alabama. I was really nervous because that place scares me. So I landed, and mind you, it was I think that one was an 8-hour leg.
Mm-hmm.
So it was 8 hours from Germany to wherever it was I landed, and then another leg from the connection hub to the airport in Alabama. And so I've been on the move for about 20 hours at this point. So I got picked up by someone, because nobody else was there to pick me up. I don't know this person. So,
Okay.
so I get in this car with this complete stranger. She's quite nice. She's wonderful. We get something to eat, and then we go to the hotel. I'm exhausted. I'm horrifically unsightful because I've got my glasses on. I've got black circles under my eyes. I was not in any state to be doing anything. But then they come up and they're like, "Hey, we're all going out to dinner. And then afterwards we might be out going out and doing something. But you gotta go. I'm so tired. No, you gotta go. You gotta meet all these people. This is all their family." It's like, fine. Just let me get changed. Let me freshen up. Okay, so I go and I get changed and I end up at this restaurant. And there's all these people I don't know. I'm not a very good social person anyway, so I'm having to talk to these strange people. They're all so very friendly, very southern and friendly, and they start poking drinks at me. Okay, no, that's fine. Oh, that's tasty. Okay, yeah, sure, here we go. All right, no, I don't really need another one. Okay, fine, you're bought around. Okay, here we go. So I'm exhausted, and I've never had that much alcohol when I was that tired, so I didn't know how it would affect me, and it never occurred to me that it would be different.
Yeah.
So they had a kind of a joint bachelorette thing. It wasn't a proper bachelorette party. It was just like, hey, let's all go out to this bar. They've got pool and karaoke. We'll just have some drinks, play some beer pong. It'll be fine.
Mm-hmm.
This is great. It's great. And I'm just going by this time. I'm just cruising because I'm just not being a responsible adult at this point. And so we're in this bar and we're talking to people. This guy comes up, he's talking to us. Hey, what are you guys doing? Oh, you're having a fun time? Oh, congratulations, somebody's getting married. Oh yeah, you guys were in the Navy? I was in the Army. Oh yeah, I was in the Army. It's like, yeah, and he starts talking. And he's like, yeah, I had 3 MOSs in 4 years, and I'm that should have been a red flag right there.
What's that? An MOS?
And it's your job.
Mm.
So the Army spends a lot of money training you for whatever it is you do.
Oh, and so
you go to a job.
Been in 3 different
really
jobs.
Ever,
yeah. Okay.
Right.
Gotcha. Okay.
You don't change jobs that quickly.
Gotcha.
I can't. I've only in all the time I was in the Army or connected to the Army, I've only ever heard of people in that amount of time changing jobs once. So he was either making it up or he was just a really crappy soldier. And so he starts talking, and he said something about a discharge, and he says, "Oh, well, what, you were in for 5 years. That's a really weird time to be in. How come you were only in for 5 years? Because usually 4 or 8, right? Mm-hmm. So it was in 5 months, 5 years, 4 months, and 19 days. And I said, because I got a combat-connected medical discharge. And he said, oh, well, that means nothing happened. And I snapped. It's not my proudest moment, but something in my mind snapped because of the difficult situations the terrible leadership that I had, the failure in leadership that I had, that did not take care of me. You take care of your shoulders. I don't care what you think of them. If you ask them to go with you and trust you and depend on you and obey your every order, and you take them to a combat zone and stay there for 16 months, you don't treat them like we were treated, especially when you have injuries.
Right.
And so, I mean, and the story is much more complicated than that, but I snapped. It hit me wrong, and I snapped. I lost control, and I snapped, and I'm chasing this guy.
Oh my God.
And the next thing I know, he's running from me. He is running from me, and the security guard in the bar is running after me, telling me to put my shirt back on.
Of the three of us in this conversation, I would have thought you the least likely to be in this situation.
I didn't hear the part where you were topless. I'm like, what?
At what point did you take your shirt off?
I don't know. And I don't know why. Maybe I thought I was a hockey player. I don't know.
Oh, that's amazing.
Oh, that's hilarious.
Well, I did put my shirt back on.
Okay, well.
I did apologize profusely and most of the rest of the evening to his fiancée and to him. But he kept telling me, and this is the beauty of it, she didn't seem to care. And neither did he.
Maybe they didn't like that.
And I was
either.
just...
Good story to tell later, I suppose. Added some entertainment value to the evening.
No, when we were leaving, we got to the hotel, and everyone went off to their rooms because everybody's staying in the same hotel. And he sat down in the lobby on the couch next to me, and he's like, "What do you look like?" I'm like, "What?" It's like, "You don't mess with my family. What do you look like?" "I'm going back." And I'm like, no, you cannot go back. He is not worth it. This guy was not worth it. He was just some guy talking BS. He doesn't deserve you. Your wedding is tomorrow. You do not need to spend your wedding in jail because of me.
Right.
I just was exhausted. I had too much to drink. It hit me in a way I was not prepared to deal with. So, and he's like, "It's fine. You know what? All those guys, all my best men, they'll be right there with me. They don't care. All I got to do is tell them, and they're right there with me. That's how we roll." And I'm just like, oh my God. I mean, I was just overwhelmed with the love that this person was showing me.
Aww.
After I had done something so, in my mind, that was horrific. I was humiliated with myself. I could not show my face barely the next day.
I've literally never heard this story, so she's been pretty embarrassed about it.
This is awesome. I love it.
I was devastated. I could not believe that I behaved like that because it's not something I do. I mean, yes, I get drunk. Yes, I have a little too much. And sometimes, yes, my shirt does come off, but usually not.
You know, we all have those moments.
Not usually in public
It's
at a
not-
bar.
It's usually not at somebody's big day, the night before their big day.
I think my favorite drunk Corri stories are where they used to live. They had this neighbor. It was an it was an older couple at first. Was his name Rudy?
Dear.
Rudy, was that his name?
Yes, it's Rudy.
And so she would message me or post on Facebook like her Rudy stories because they would go over there to visit, and for some reason she thought it was a good idea to try to drink for drink with this old German man.
Not.
So it was hilarious.
So
you'd get the drunken Corri posts about what she did at Rudy's.
That's so funny.
How she'd be lying.
See,
under
those
the
were
table.
funny.
They
The
were.
first time that happened, well, mind you, Germans are very reserved people.
Okay.
They show happiness and emotion and friendliness to strangers. Usually, if it's like an international soccer game tournament or something like that. And so it took us about a year before we even got any of our neighbors even talk to us. And he just suddenly invited us over for drinks. And so we thought, okay, fine, we're going to go have like a glass of wine with these people. They're in their 80s. It's going to be a very sedate affair. And then And at the end of the night, I was molecularly bonded with the dog bed. So, because he drinks schnapps. And schnapps in Germany is their version of moonshine. It's not peppermint or peach, 17% something sweet. It's 42% at least.
You're just drinking some green alcohol over in the corner.
Oh
It's
my
fine.
God.
Oh. And this guy drinks it like since then I have seen him drunk a couple of times, but it's after his wife of 50-something years died, so I kind of think he has an excuse here.
Sure.
Not that I choose to, prefer to be an enabler, but I mean, it was rough on
At
him.
that point in your life, you do whatever you want.
Yeah, you're past judgment.
Yeah.
You're like, I'm just gonna do what I want to do.
So, yeah, and it's actually really amazing. We moved since then. We moved about a year ago away from that neighborhood, but we still go every Wednesday night for drinks.
Oh, you still
He has
go
a
over
Wednesday-
every week?
Yeah,
Oh, that's
because it's a
good.
Wednesday night crew. I mean, this guy has a social life busier than mine. If you ever say, "Hey, Rudy, can we come over?" He's like, "Let me check my calendar." Well, I have birthdays, and it's scarily, it's amazing. You don't think about it, but when you're 80 years old, half of your social calendar consists of funerals.
Yeah.
And I'm not trying to be flippant with that,
No,
but
it's
it's just
true.
something that you don't really consider. And he's like, "Oh, I have a funeral on this day and a birthday, and I'm going to the old folks' home on this day, and I'm gonna go hang out with my girls for lunch on this day." He's got this group of friends that he goes. These women, they're in their 90s. It's like, wow.
He's got a whole bunch of girlfriends.
He does.
I like
he's
it.
a
That's
flirt.
great.
Like it.
These are my life goals.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was about to say. Life goals.
This guy, I mean, to watch him with his wife, it was amazing. I mean, she was showing me how to cook something, like old school German recipe of some kind. She was showing me how to cook it one day. And he came in the kitchen and she dropped something. She bent over to pick it up. He ran up, slapped her on the ass, and giggled. I kid you not, he giggled and scurried away.
I love it. I love everything about it.
Adorable.
That's how you live life.
He
Always,
was cackling
forever.
in the other room.
If I was
And
gonna
she
marry
stood up
somebody I
and
knew they'd do that to me forever, that would be a selling point for me.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah, I like it.
Well, when she stood up, she just looked at me and she just kind of rolled her eyes and kept working on the recipe, and I was just cracking up.
That's awesome.
They were good. They were good together.
That's sweet.
Yeah, so we still go over, and he's taught me
Do you still get drunk over there?
no, and it's a wonderful excuse
Dang it,
because
she learned moderation.
we have to drive. One of us has to drive.
Fair.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can't just
I'm
walk
not a
around.
neighbor anymore, so yeah.
I cannot even smell schnapps without getting nauseous. So John is usually the one who handles it for me.
Mhm.
But it's been a really wonderful experience because we've learned so much about how to be German, how to be in Germany, how Germans are in this, at least in this generation, and we learned a lot about like what they think about, how they think, and we learned so much of the language just from sitting there. And they speak dialect. They don't speak this proper school German that I learned.
Right.
So that is, and I can understand this dialect, and I can't speak it, but I can understand it now. And just learning so much, and these older people have, they probably think it's the weirdest thing in the world that these Americans just come and sit and listen to them talk on Wednesdays. I mean, sometimes we talk because it depends on what the conversation is. Sometimes they just go on and we can't keep up. We just listen and learn because you can always understand more than you can say.
Sure. Yeah.
They tell us about the old days and the old ways. I mean, Rudy tells us stories about how, he was born in 1934, I think he said. 34, 38, I get it mixed up. But he remembers that, the city near us, it was bombed out, and his grandmother lived in this city, so he remembers his mother going on her bicycle to get his grandmother out of the city.
Wow.
When it was being bombed out in the war. And he remembers, he remembers his mother. He said the best thing that ever happened to women was the washing machine. And at first that sounds really some kind of something, but if you listen to him, he says, because I remember my mother, there were six or seven kids. And I remember my mother would spend entire days with cooking the water over the fire and doing the washing by hand. And I'm just like, wow.
Yeah,
and he'll bring out bits and pieces from that era. And and when you talk about being in Germany, people automatically think about that era. There are so many Germans who wanted nothing to do with all of that.
Yeah.
And you can see they go quiet when they start talking about the past. Like, Rudy will not talk about his parents, but I've seen a picture of his dad in a military uniform, but he will not talk about that. Like, you can see him go really kind of solemn, and he'll change the subject, and we just let him do it because, I mean, who knows what he doesn't want to say?
Right.
Who knows what his father was forced to do? And I'm not saying that makes it okay, but
it makes it complicated, for sure.
It makes it more human and more understanding. It's like you realize that people don't, I don't know, there's no really way to say this that's okay, but it's like people will get forced to do horrific things in a matter of survival.
Sure.
And again, I'm not saying that makes it okay. It's just to watch somebody struggle with that. It broke my heart to see this old man, and he will just open up, start crying. This jolly old school German guy starts talking about his wife and just breaks down crying. Gets really, really upset when the topic drifts towards his family or his brothers and sisters, and who knows why, but it's been a wonderful experience getting to spend time with this older generation and a culture
just having friends outside your own generation is really valuable. I was just saying that earlier. Yeah,
it really is.
I think it's also interesting to note that every one of the 5 or 6 80-year-olds that's regularly with us on Wednesday nights at Rudy's has actually, at one time or another, compared Trump to Hitler. They do not like him.
Well, Corri, we're approaching the end of the segment, so do you have any parting words for us? Or
I can't believe I just prattled on and I didn't actually tell you. I made this whole list of, because usually the first question that people ask me is, how is Germany different? Well, I made a list. I've been compiling this list for 3 days.
Oh, I'm sorry.
And I just prattled on about, some old guy giving me schnapps.
Oh, but I love it.
Yeah, no, that's the real stuff.
We love Rudy.
Yes.
You can contact the podcast at brokebrokenpodcast@gmail.com. The Broken Podcast can be found on Twitter @BrokeBrokenShow, on Instagram and Facebook @BrokeBrokenPodcast.